This time on American Viscountess, I enjoy summer sunshine in one of the most glorious historic gardens in Britain, Newby Hall in North Yorkshire. Welcome to the beautiful Italianate gardens here at Mapperton and to a very special episode of American Viscountess. The enduring fascination and love the British have with their gardens is almost embedded in the national psyche. And it's clear to see here at Mapperton, but also at every historic house I visit across the UK. Recently, on a visit to North Yorkshire, I was fortunate enough to spend time in the stunningly beautiful historic gardens at Newby Hall, the home of our friends Richard and Lucinda Compton. Lovely to see both of you again.
Good to see you, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say that I brought the weather, because I don't think I did, but thank you, whoever.
Oh, it's always like this in Yorkshire.
I believe you. I'll try to believe you there. But, you know, what's so wonderful about coming here to Newby is, of course, not only the house, this wonderful backdrop, but people come here because your gardens are so well known. I mean, you've won award after award for these gardens. I've walked through them a bit just to get to this bench. But can you tell me just a little bit more about the history of your gardens here?
Yeah, well, originally when the house was built, there was some very formal gardens, as you would expect at the time. That's 1690. But really the gardens that you see now are my grandfather's creation. Right. And when he inherited, he said that he'd inherited a picture with no frame. So a lovely house, yes, which is Newby, but without a garden. And so he set about creating that frame for his picture.
Oh my goodness.
And that was in the 20s. So you get this formal garden running down to the river with arguably the longest double herbaceous borders, certainly in Britain.
Yes, absolutely.
And then formal compartments set off it, rather like rooms, you know,
yes,
of a house.
That was his vision then,
yeah,
is that right? And how many years did that, because these gardens are vast.
He did about 50 years,
he
yes.
was gardening here for 50
yeah,
years.
so he designed it, and he realised that occasionally in Yorkshire you get a strong southwest wind. And then he made that wonderful decision in about 1930 that his design could actually get to fruition. And that's when he turned the first turf.
And then you've got the Second World War, and during that period houses weren't open to the public then, really, right? So
No, well, this was actually reserved for the royal family.
Oh my goodness.
It was one of the 3 houses that was reserved for the royal family should the Germans invade.
Oh my goodness. So he then had to prepare for that as well.
Yeah. And there were letters. There was a famous moment when the general in charge of the North wrote to my grandfather, who was a mere major,
right,
and said, we're going to requisition the house. And he said, I'm so sorry, sir, but I think you ought to refer this to Buckingham Palace.
Oh my
So Newby
goodness.
was never requisitioned by the army. Yeah.
So because Newby was never requisitioned, because it was on hold, if you like, for the royal family, just in case, that you were quite lucky then, because of course the house was
lucky.
intact and the gardens stayed intact.
They stayed intact, but of course there was nobody to do the gardening.
Right.
Because they were all fighting.
Yes.
So it was very much put on sort of hold.
Yeah.
And indeed the lawn in front of the West Front was growing vegetables for the war effort. And there were pillboxes, with guns in and all that sort of stuff. So it was a very different place, obviously.
Yes.
During the war.
Right.
And then after the war, my grandfather then went back to trying to get it back together again.
Right. You know, we do see so many historic houses opening up to the public after the Second World War due to, of course, the taxes that were levied. And it was, it was almost as if the hand was forced on many of these historic houses, which is a blessing for, of course, visitors like me and the public. And, and it's wonderful to be able to showcase the house and the gardens. But so your grandfather did open up to the public.
Yes, he did, and he had a tragedy because my grandmother died. She got cancer and she died very young, and so he was unhappy in things, and it was my father who said, well, why don't you open to the public? Because it gave him a raison d'etre and everything else. And he literally used to park the cars. I mean, he would get his handkerchief out and wave at somebody and say, no, you're parking in there. So he was doing everything. And then he sold his plants in a little plant stall in the car park. And so we're actually celebrating 75 years of being open to the public this year.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Looking at the gardens now, I know, Lucinda, you are head gardener. Let's be honest here, right?
You'll meet the head gardener.
I know I'll meet the head gardener.
Brilliant head gardener, Lawrence.
But it's a real passion
garden
of yours.
curator, would you call yourself?
Yeah.
Yes, it has become a real passion. I was very fortunate that Rick's father, Robin, taught me a lot about gardening, and I had 10 years with him, showing me around, teaching me about the plants. And he was a phenomenal horticulturist. He had a royal medal from the RHS, Victoria Medal.
So you were able to spend 10 years with him just
learning,
That is incredible.
And then when he died, I obviously had to sort of take on the role of curator.
Yes. No, I was only joking, head gardener. I know you've got one, but you are. I mean, listen, I found you this morning in there. Yes. Exactly. Gardening away.
I think gardening can become so addictive or obsessive, and I have to absolutely love it. And it's not only the creativity, but also actually enjoy weeding and pruning and the maintenance roles.
Yes, and it's sort of within you. You're able to go into that present moment. We all talk about staying in the present moment, and forgetting about the past and not worrying about the future. And gardening has that ability to do that, because you really need to be focused on what you're doing, but also you're in a beautiful setting and you're in nature. And
it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. So you are then, of course, open to the public. You have been, as you said, you're coming up to 75 years. But you've also, the two of you, have seen this garden, expand under your own wings. Is that right? You have made expansions and additions to it.
Well, we've certainly done adaptions.
Yes.
I mean, and Lucinda's in the middle of doing the restoration of the rock garden and then replanting the main borders.
Yes.
Which was a very brave decision to make, but and the palette colours have changed from what they were to now a much softer palette, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think just sort of one last question is, obviously I am American, and lots of Americans come over here because we don't have what the Brits have, sort of these glorious gardens. England and Britain you are known for these spectacular gardens. And I guess just maybe a bit of the history in one sense. What is this fascination that I think, looking at the British people with their gardens, because it's hard to find another country that has this love so much.
I think we have a great climate for gardening. So we're because of the Gulf Stream, we're warm enough, and we're always fairly wet. So there's this wonderful climate. We're not too far north or too hot.
Right.
So we can grow a whole range of plants. And the other thing is the gardens have evolved over centuries, haven't they?
Yes.
So, Rich was talking about this, the framework of this garden from 1690, and there was a house before that, and that's fairly typical of English country houses. They've evolved over centuries, and so you've got mature trees, amazing ancient walls.
And when we do get a very dry summer, you get the outline. If you look from the roof, you can get the outline of the old parterre.
Right.
In the grass. It's quite
of the 1690.
Yes.
Incredible.
Well, it's probably that's mainly
later.
the Victorian.
It's a bit later.
Maybe the Victorian one, but you can get the parterre of the Victorian.
Exactly. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing, incredible, and it just then goes to show you sort of how these gardens have evolved, and with each generation, you're constantly thinking, well, what can I do to the garden? And it's what you are doing, of course, is you're, as you say, adapting and maybe bringing back to life the rock garden.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which looks stunning.
Well, I can't wait to see it. So, Lucinda, you're about to give me a little tour. Is that right?
I'd love to, Julie.
Well,
yeah, that'd be a
brilliant.
pleasure.
Brilliant. Thank you both so much. Hi everybody, I am here at the beautiful Newby Hall and their glorious gardens, and I've just bumped into Carolyn and Colin, who are new historic house members. Is that right?
We are.
Yep.
And what made you become a historic house member?
So a year or two ago we went with my parents to one of the historic houses sites, and we looked them up on the website and saw that there were so many places around here that we could visit. We decided to join ourselves.
Right, and this is your first time. Wow.
First visit.
First visit. And first of all, what do you think of Newby and their gardens?
Well, it's beautiful. We haven't done the house tour yet. We're doing that in an hour's time, but we're looking forward to doing that. And the gardens are just amazing.
Yeah, just incredible.
Beautiful, yeah.
And really, I'm of course not a member, but I'm actually a member house. So we have a historic house in West Dorset. I do hope you come and visit. It's
We'll
called
try.
Mapperton, so try to get down to West Dorset. But for us personally, of course, it's incredibly important to have visitors who are historic house members come to these houses and enjoy them. And we're really trying to get the word out. And so did you know with your membership, you're also going to be receiving the newsletter. You'll be getting a copy of the magazine. And there's lots of things that you can find online, like live lectures. So it's not just about visiting the houses and the gardens. There's also special benefits as well. Were you aware of that?
So didn't know about the lectures, but we know about the magazine, and we've already got our handbook. And that's kind of why we came today, because we were looking for somewhere to go, because we knew it was going to be a nice day, and this was fairly local. So we used the handbook to find this and decide to come.
Fantastic. And I think also it's important just to say that being a member of historic houses is being a part of a membership where these are privately owned houses, and so they're living history. So it hasn't stopped 100 years ago and telling the same story. It's carrying on, and each of the custodians at these historic houses are really making their own mark and putting their imprint on something. So you can constantly see how the gardens and the house is evolving with the custodians who are living there.
Absolutely, and that is something different, going to a house where it's still really a home. So you've got to see it as two things, history and home.
Yes, exactly. And it's sometimes, I mean, you'll probably see it when you go into Newby, but definitely when you come to Mapperton. I'm still tooting my own horn here. But when you do a tour at Mapperton, you'll see photographs of my kids and me and my husband. And so you're able to come in there and be like, oh my gosh, somebody lives here. And those of you who are thinking, well, I have to live here in the UK in order to become a member of historic houses, that is incorrect. You can become an international member as well, because you'll receive the magazine, you'll receive the newsletter. There's lots of amazing bits online that you can be a part of as well. Did you know that you could become an international member?
We did not know that. And actually, we have a son who is married to an American and lives in America.
What?
And they're actually really interested in English history. And so they will be really interested to know that they can get information in America about places like this.
Exactly.
And I definitely didn't know that.
Oh my goodness. Well, this is what we want to really convey to this international audience, is that their support goes a long way, even across the pond. Probably you know this because you have an American daughter-in-law. Is that right?
We do.
And let's be honest, we are slightly obsessed with British history and these British historic houses.
Yeah, and they would love to be able to look up information knowing that they were kind of still linked to it somehow.
Yes.
So I think they would really enjoy that. And I know her family, her dad's side, are very interested in English history. So I think they would be very interested in having access to that as well. Might even make them come and visit.
Amazing. So do check out the link down below and use my promo code to become a historic house member. And you've heard it right here, firsthand, that you, as an international person watching this right now, can become a member as well. Lucinda, this is the view. Whenever I think of
Yes,
Newby and the gardens.
This is the famous Herbaceous Borders,
Yes.
which are 172 metres long, and they're designed to be at their best for July, August and September, and we replanted them in 2014.
Oh, you
So
did?
Huge job.
Oh
all
my
of
gosh,
them. We
huge
did
job.
it entirely in-house, dug everything out and started again. So, and we put this netting across, which you can see,
Yes.
to protect the plants from the wind.
Okay.
And Newby, this is the sort of main north-south axis, and then the statue walk up there is the main east-west. And then off them, there are about 14 or 15 rooms or individual gardens.
Wow.
Yeah, throughout the garden. Yeah.
That is incredible. So this job here, 2014, how long did it take to do this, and who was curating this?
So it took us in all about 4 years, because it took us about 2 years of research, visiting nurseries, buying in the plants in 9-centimetre pots. We laid them out in our nursery area and bulked them up, planned the garden, and it was designed by Mark, our then head gardener, Louise, who looked after the borders at the time, and myself. So the three of us together, and then we planted it all in-house,
Oh
and
my
we did it
goodness.
over 2 winters.
Did you?
And it was really a huge job.
Of course. The herbaceous borders are breathtaking. Stretching down to the river, they give the most glorious view back to the hall, which over the centuries has been designed and remodeled by some of the greatest British architects, including Sir Christopher Wren in the 1690s and Robert Adam in the 18th century. At Newby, the house and gardens complement each other. All around, there are glimpses of the hall framed by trees and plants, and it's absolutely stunning. And to create and tend to all of this beauty, I think you'll be so surprised as to how many gardeners it takes.
I act as curator, helping with weeding and decision making
Right.
primarily. Then we have Lawrence, our head gardener, who I hope you'll meet. And we're a team of 6.5 gardeners at the moment. And probably a more institutional garden of our size might have 30 and
Yes.
maybe 100 volunteers.
Yes.
So we have a very, very active, very professional team, and they manage incredibly well.
That is, and you're right, that, I mean, considering the scale of this garden here, 6.5 gardeners
Yeah.
is not, and then especially when you look back in time.
Between the wars here, they had 22.
Right,
Yeah.
22 gardens. Wow.
But the garden was less intensive at that date,
Okay.
I think. Newby now is really a garden for all seasons, you know, and we're open 6 months of summer, but there's an enormous amount of interest. You know, every week it's changing, and
Yes, of
something
course.
exciting.
Gardens change within the seasons, and
Yes.
you can see them constantly evolving.
Yes, and you're always, every winter you might lose a tree, or, you know, and they need regenerating.
Yes.
They need,
So-
this will-
How much, Lucinda, you know, as you sort of, you know, I could kind of call you sort of curator of the gardens, yes? And do you spend quite a bit of time out here? Because I saw you earlier.
I have various other roles.
Yes,
So,
yes.
I fit the gardening in around them.
Okay.
And often that might be weekends or evenings.
Yes.
If a beautiful summer's evening, I might be out here, you know, till 9 or 10 at night. I absolutely love it, and it's so peaceful in the garden.
Yes.
And during the weekends, it's a fun time for me to actually meet visitors and hear their stories. And they tell me problems in their garden. And, and I love that too.
I hope you are enjoying these wonderful historic house episodes. We put so much time and energy to make sure that these are of high quality productions. And we want to thank our patrons, because the reason that we're able to create such beautiful episodes is because of their support. So do consider becoming an American Viscountess patron. Here you'll get behind the scenes. You'll also get American Viscountess merchandise. All episodes are ad-free and you get early access to them as well. Christmas cards, and it's a wonderful community of like-minded people who also love historic houses as much as I do. So do check out the details down below at patreon.com/American Viscountess. As Lucinda mentioned, the dedication of Newby's gardening team means that whenever you visit, the gardens are putting on the most wonderful displays. I met up with head gardener Lawrence Wright to explore the rose garden. Lawrence, it's a real treat that I'm with the head gardener here at Newby. I mean, because these gardens are sensational. I mean, they're vast.
They are vast.
And you have a big job.
A very big job, 25 acres of formal garden for essentially 6 full-time people.
Right.
So it is a lot of work.
Yes.
But, you know, the reward is all around us.
Yeah, it is. And how long have you been here then as head gardener?
So about 18 months.
Okay.
So still very new to the role, and it takes such a while to get your head around a garden on this scale,
right,
and this importance as well. You know, it's a couple of seasons of work to just understand how you fit into a space and how you can work with what is already there and how you can take it forward so that it's always getting better for the future.
Yes, exactly. And when you know, since you're relatively new, so to speak, 18 months, when you come in and see a garden of this size, I mean, does your imagination and creativity just sort of just go, whoa, what do I want to do first?
Yeah, it's exactly that. There's so much that when you walk around, you think, oh, you know, this particular view is beautiful. You know, that bit maybe we can tweak, and the temptation is to run straight into it.
Right.
And actually, you need to pull yourself back, tell yourself to get a grip. You need to sort of understand the space you're in before you then start making decisions that sort of take the garden forward.
Yes.
So this is the rose garden, and has been a rose garden for the last 40 years. And actually, it's a beautiful space, and everyone loves roses. The visitors love roses,
yes,
and we're just about to start. You know, the first blooms are just coming out.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So we had an issue in here where actually the majority of our visitors come in the summer holiday, and they come into the rose garden expecting to see beautiful roses.
Right.
And actually, they can be disappointed in August. So we've gone through underplanting. We've put in a load of mid to late summer flowering perennials that actually bolster when the rose garden drops in terms of rose colour, all of the herbaceous comes through, and added a few modern shrubs into it. So it's balancing how the garden, the traditional feel of the garden, but also making it move forward and be more present in the garden as a whole.
Yes, all year round, and especially because this garden is open to the public.
Yes.
So it's being able to sort of smell, see, for extended periods.
Exactly, and you know, it's right in the heart of the garden, so it's got to work hard for its place.
Yes.
So now we've extended that season of interest over many months rather than 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, wonderful. And you know, also when we come to gardens, I think as a visitor, we're blown away, but because it's so beautiful and the scents incredible. But your job is not just when the gardens are open to the public.
No.
It is all year round, and almost in one sense, so it's almost that off season where you're working the hardest.
Yeah, we often have visitors say to us, oh, it must be really nice in the winter because, you know, we're not here. And actually we do all of the dirty work in the winter. We do the hard work in the winter.
Yes.
But also we're thinking, you know, sometimes a year in advance, 18 months, 2 years in advance. It's not just what you see in front of you day to day. It's the process of getting to where you want to be in, you know, 5 years' time. Sometimes starts now.
Of course it does, because, you know, it's not that these plants need nurturing, they need time to get to that maturity state, and that's just not an overnight process.
It's one of those things, you know, interiors are the classic example. It's very instant. You go and buy a picture, you buy a vase, you put it down, it's done. With this, we start with a seed or a cutting, and it can take years before you get the desired effect, really.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, listen, Lawrence, sensational job. I've walked around and it is stunning what you have done. And this rose garden, oh gosh, incredible. as we saw with the rose garden there, the 25 acres of gardens at Newby are divided into little rooms. And in each, you're met with this gorgeous tapestry of different atmospheres, colors, and textures.
This one on the left is looking very colourful today.
I mean, you can't help but smile when you see this.
Yes, exactly. I think this is one of the most popular areas of the garden with our visitors. It's just a colour, it's like a sort of box of sweets or something.
Yes.
These are candelabra primulas from the Himalayas, and we've got wonderful collections of primulas throughout the garden, and these are Harlow Car hybrids. And they do this every year without fail, and it's just a joy.
It's just a joy. And so
yes.
they're in one sense right now, I feel like they are in full bloom, is that right? Or just about to be in.
Yes, and they carry on for a while
Yeah.
because the flowers keep coming up the stem.
Yes.
And,
So you have this sort of this color burst for
Yes,
quite a long
yes,
period.
and look at those,
Yeah,
you
look,
know,
I mean,
just,
absolutely.
Gorgeous.
Yes.
This actual garden was created by my father-in-law, Robin.
Okay.
So, and it's sort of in typical Newby fashion, we had a leak from the moat of water around the shop, which he'd put in, and somehow the water came down to here, and it was always boggy. And then a very big tree fell down, and so there was a huge clearing, and he said, let's have a water garden. So he then designed this rill of water with the little bridge and
Yes.
stones.
Oh my goodness. So he just. Well, that's very clever thinking out of the
Yes.
box.
Exactly. He was a brilliant gardener.
Yeah. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
And in the autumn, we've got some wonderful trees here. Most of these trees are spring flowering and then wonderful autumn colour.
So yeah, so
It's
again,
all
coming
year
to the
round.
garden,
Yeah.
you can see it change throughout the seasons, which is just wonderful. You know, we are having a conversation, but I can imagine somebody just walking through in silence,
Yeah.
hearing the
Yeah.
bird song, hearing the water,
Exactly.
and of course,
Peaceful and
peaceful.
beautiful.
Yeah. So where are we entering into now?
So this is the rock garden, which was opened in 1914 by Richard's great-grandfather.
1914.
Just as the gardeners all went off to war. This is a laburnum pergola that way.
It's
And
so lovely.
Here there are 22 beds with rocks brought from the Dales nearby, and this was designed by Ellen Wilmot, and who was a famous gardener at the time.
Right.
And it's we're halfway through restoring it.
Okay.
So on the right you can see beds that we've done,
Yes, yes.
and on the left ones that we're preparing,
Ah.
and we'll plant those in the autumn.
Right, okay.
And,
This is wonderful. And what was the inspiration for having a rock garden? Was there...
Well, at the time, the people were starting to travel, and of course, the British particularly loved the Alps and alpine scenery, and I think it was the sort of Edwardian times, the first package holidays, and they were setting off and they started skiing and they went walking in the summer, and they fell in love with all of these sort of alpine plants.
Right.
And then they came back and they wanted their own rock garden at home. And so there were a lot of rock gardens were built in that Edwardian
Really?
era. And this is one of the biggest.
That is fascinating. You said that you're sort of restoring it, if you like.
Yes, I mean, since 1914, when of course the gardeners, the minute they opened it in August, they all went off to war.
Right.
And most of them didn't return. And so the garden, we think from that date, started to slide already.
Right.
And then it gradually sort of became a woodland garden, a rather shady woodland garden, with a lot of the existing little pines like that would have been little rock garden pine, is now a champion tree.
Yes.
It's one of the biggest in the country. And then also a lot of trees had sown themselves in here, yews and
Yes.
what have you. And so we've cleared the trees, a lot of them, and now replanted with alpines.
With alpines, wonderful.
Himalayan poppies.
So this is another sort of pocket within these glorious gardens, and they are just sensational. But it's wonderful just to be able to contrast the difference from where we just were, the water garden, to here,
exactly.
the rock.
There's a very, very different feel here. And again, one of the most popular areas of the garden, especially with children who love all the paths.
Yes, yes.
And it's replanting has given us an opportunity for new plants that we haven't had before.
Yeah.
And that's very exciting.
And it's all very exciting. It's so wonderful, Lucinda, just what you've been able to continue to do and continue to create and evolve.
So these acers, obviously 100 years old. And these extraordinary wellheads.
Extraordinary. Absolutely wonderful. The gardens at Newby are sensational, and I hope to return very, very soon. Every time you visit a garden, you see something new, and it's just the same here at Mapperton. The character and atmosphere of the gardens change with the seasons. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you back here very soon for another historic house and gardens visit. Bye, everybody.